So welcome all, and let me introduce myself fully. I'm Harun Madena Miesi. I'm one of the founding member of East Africa Youth Consultation Forum. It's a project under Bosch Alum Network. The Bosch Alum Network, it's a community of professionals across the globe, comprised of more than 8,000 professionals from Robert Bosch Foundation. The Bosch Alum Network is managed by International Alum Center, IEC Berlin. They're the one who managing the Bosch Alum Network. So East Africa Youth Consultation Forum, it's a project we found it 2020 during the COVID-19, whereby we were focusing more on the impact of COVID-19 to the youth leaders. And after hosting a 4 days intensive session, which some of you are part of the conversation, some ideas raised whereby most of the participants were requesting that we have a country-specific session within the sector of governance policy issues, because we realized that the policy sector, the governance sector, the election sector, majority of young people are not engaging themselves. And also we realized there's some who are also doing amazing work. So we saw that gap, and we asked ourselves, how best can we kind of close this gap, and how best can we generate more knowledge and having a session which can inspire more young people to be part of the governance system, the election part, and also issues of policy and budgeting part of it. So this session is timely. We decided to do it because we are from the general elections. So we asked ourselves as a planning part of it, as a project members, like what next after general elections, and how best can we bring more youth leaders on board so that we can hold these leaders accountable, because election is not a one-time event. Election, it's a process. Okay, we have elected this leader, so what should we sit and watch them, or what should we do way forward? And most of you have been asking me those questions, and that's why I was like, why not bring this conversation and bring experts with this awesome knowledge and trying to break this gap. So the second East Africa Youth Consultation Forum, we are focusing on youth leadership, budget, policy making, purely for the youth leaders from Kenya at the national level. We have managed to shortlist 25 participants, exact 25 participants from around 20 counties out of 47 counties. And we received around 100 applications. So it was a little bit complicated to summarize and trying to ensure that we have that kind of regional balance. So congratulations each one of you who managed to pass through the shortlist part of it. Yeah, so that's brief about the East Africa Youth Consultation Forum. That's brief about the Bosch Alum Network. And that's brief about today's session. So today we'll be focusing more purely on issues of election and governance system. Then tomorrow we'll be focusing on different topics, which will focus more on policy and budget part of it. That's how we decided to split it. And each category will have its own mentor and expert who will be sharing more insights. And also we are aiming to generate more knowledge within the sector so that you can use it for your own work. Thank you so much. In case of any question, feel free to ask via the chat box. I'll be reading the chat box. So welcome. So without wasting time, allow me to welcome Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, feel free also to share your presentation direct. You can share your presentation direct, no problem. Kennedy?
Thanks so much. I hope I'm loud.
Yeah, sure, we can hear you properly.
Yeah, I always have no problem with them. So allow me to share.
Okay.
Just trying to, the host should allow me to share.
Okay, you are now a co-host. You can share.
Okay, so let me just go there a minute, please.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So I hope it's on the screen now.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm Kennedy Hakaba. I have a lot of interest in the issues of youth, election governance, and just the institutional capability of civil society, CBOs, and NGOs. Now, I have a vast knowledge on election governance and policy development. Now, when I was just preparing for this session, I asked myself, so how should I approach it? And I thought two ways. One, I wanted to basically start by saying what people may already know. And it's good what people already know. Now, what we know is that in Kenya, we are a multi-party democracy, basically meaning that we have several parties in this country, and that's how we do our politics. We came from one party to multi-party democracy. I think it was a process. I don't want to repeat it. Secondly, what we also know is that Kenya has a bicameral parliament. We have the Senate, and we have the National Assembly. And what we also know is that the National Assembly has a total of 349 members, plus the Speaker, who is an ex-official person, official. Article 95 of the Constitution outlines that 290 MPs will be elected. So you literally go and elect your MP. We also know 47 women are elected, 12 nominated, and then we have a person with disability, youth, or special interest groups. And then in the Senate, we have 67 members who are elected. These are things that are known. So I wanted to come from the known to the deeper things now that concerns you.
Sorry, Kennedy.
We also know, yes.
So, is it possible to put your presentation in presentation mode so that we can see the content of your presentation, if possible?
So are you presented? Are you seeing?
Yeah, we are seeing it, but it's not moving down. You're not scrolling, so that we see the content.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, the issue is I started with a small introduction before I get into the presentation.
Okay, no problem. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying what people know. You know what people should know, the background. If you're not in Kenya, what you need to know. So what you also need to know if you're not in Kenya is that our Senate has 67 members who are elected. These are things you can Google and see. And we have 16 nominated members, and we have PWP interest groups in the Senate. We also have National Assembly. We have 47 county governments, which have the executive, and it has the regional, what someone will say, the county assemblies. People are also elected there, and that is the gist of what we know. But the question here is in the context of youth. And the question is, even as we ask ourselves, so who are the key stakeholders in this election? We're talking about IBC, ORPP, and many other stakeholders. But then when I come to the gist of my presentation is then, how do you interface with the election in Kenya? That's why my presentation is named Civic Engagement, a focus on the youth. So I start my presentation. Sorry for rejecting so many things. Now, okay. Now this is what I want to say. I don't know if I've reduced the. Now, this is what I want to say, that the rights of youth are provided in Article 55. Among others, the state is required to ensure that youth have opportunity to associate, be represented, and participate in political, social, and economic, and the other spheres of life. So basically, we are saying that when you are doing a presentation, when you are seeking your representation in these spheres, it is constitutionally given. However, there are some interesting statistics, and this is what it says. And I will eventually go deep and ask some hard questions here. That 75% of 47.6 million in Kenya, the last census showed that we are 47.6, or we are now around 50 million, but now we are using the figures we know. 75% of the 47.6 million are under the age of 35. Or let me clarify it, 75 of the 47.6 million population is under the age of 35. And we're also saying that in 2022, when the last registered voters were given, we were around 22 million, not really 19. And with this in mind, then we ask ourselves, why are we not having a youth president? 75% are under 35 of our population. Actually, people who went to vote, the winning president got around 7-point-something million. But we are saying 75% of the 47.6 million population is under 35 years. And so you want to ask yourself, where's the problem? And that then will be covered in the subsequent slides. Now, in 2019, the population data estimates that the population aged 35 years and below accounts for 75% of the population. I'm just repeating that. It's a very important point. In 2022 audit of voter list, youth, that is 18 to 34, constitute 39.4. Generally saying, 39.84 are in the you receive your ID when you reach 18 years, and then you can go ahead and take your voter's card. So we are saying in 2022, the audit of voter list, youth between 18 to 34 years constituted 39.84. However, there was a decline of this by 5.27. The expectation is between 2017 and 2018, the numbers have gone up. So more youth should have registered. Now, we also told in the same, it was done by KPMG. We're also being told that youth voters, that is female, declined by 7.75%. And the youth male declined by 2.8%. 8, 9. I think the next question we're asking ourselves, so what is the issue? The next slide. So key issues. Now, after election, which I was really involved, I was involved from the nomination to party primaries, all that process to election observation. And many stakeholders, including observers, observed one thing. There was an apathy of youth going to vote. So, and when you talk to youth or when you review many reports, the following issues come up. One, the general apathy. Youth are disinterested in political process. But I was saying that youth always are fan of people who campaign. This apathy. I think I'm trying to break down this process by saying that youth are actually disinterested in political process. People who get involved lack the strength in numbers and are thus swallowed. We are saying that we around 39, if you remember the slide up here, it said 39.8% were youth. But we are saying there's a general disinterested, youth are disinterested in political process. And then those who show up their heads, they're also swallowed. Next, the higher unemployment rate leads to economic insecurity. Many youth says, so why am I participating in this election? And some of them are stifled by lack of finance. So the voices are stifled, and this leads to dependency. You think like in Kenya, if you are affiliated to Azimio, then Azimio should fund you. Then UTA should fund you. The next thing is that strengthens societal voices. There's bribery, manipulation, corruption. So this process of unemployment, has made it difficult for young people to participate in the electoral process. Many of them don't have jobs, so they don't have money to do campaigns. I always say, off the mic, really, if you don't have money, then politics is not your place. Now, the next point is this poor or inadequate representation in policy. I read so many of the political parties' manifestos. Now, the youth, other than being magnified as a big thing, when you settle down and read the provision of youth, is a small space within the manifesto. So then you ask yourself, are youth involved? I think in Kenya, and I'm a bit apolitical, but I'm just using political parties for examples in this training. I think we saw political parties like UDA coming up with charters. So instead of signing a whole manifesto, then they came up with charters. So youth charter, education charter, health charter. So what we are saying is that there's generally inadequate representation of youth in this process. And the next thing is political parties, the internal democracies are not pro-youth. Youth are disengaged. Basically saying political parties have their owners. You are in a party for someone. And if you're not in Kenya, allow me to mention, when you mention KANU, you mention Gideon Moi. When you mention ODM, you mention Raila Odinga. When you mention Wiper, you mention Kalonzo Musyoka. when you mention UDA, then you mention William Samoei Ruto, who is our president. We are saying that while parties have that provision to ensure that there's inclusion of youth in their party processes, youth have not gotten their right footing in political. I know many political parties have youth leagues, for example. Basically, a representation of youth voices within political parties. However, you look at what is happening in youth leagues, which I have worked with for a long time. It's more of mtu wa mkono. You are a hands person, and ununue gazeti. So youth are not coming out strongly. And I will say that this was more evidence during the many youth were found to be nowhere. Now, so it's more of the youth are involved at a tokenistic level, and this edges them out of the real political process. So the question then is, so where are the opportunities? Sometimes go to town, and I get many youth. You go to town in CBD, you get many youth are shooting their TikTok, they are shooting their WhatsApp status message, they are shooting their Facebook section. We are saying these are things. So just allow me to put on the so that you can also relate with who is speaking. Now, youth are techno-savvy. Why not get online and research, and engage meaningfully? We are saying that one of the biggest part, and I think our governor now is doing it, he suspended where you are not allowed to shoot town. You can shoot anywhere in town, your small clip and post where you want. But youth are techno-savvy. They can get online research and do many things that the older generation cannot do. Participation. Now, participation is in our constitution, Article 10, is part of our national values and principles of good governance. So youth, you are not participating in this process as a privilege, but you are participating as a constitutional right. Next is that constitutional requirement for representation, that generally there are more provision for youth to participate in the election. And it is a push. And Kenya is loud for having the best, most progressive constitution in Kenya. It will not be the best. So the next point is that the universal suffrage, that this freedom we are having, where people can go and participate in election, people fought for it. So why don't you want to just do what you need to do? I remember during election, I was in one of the national election observation team. And you go in a field, you get youth are actually doing politics on an election day. Where I come from, there are places people meet, and people are doing politics on an election day. And an election day, people are supposed to go and vote, not to see who will win. Now, the other thing is that youth is a transition, meaning 4 years ago, really, I was a young person. I was 35 years. But now I'm no longer youth. Youth is not like a woman. A woman is a woman forever. But youth, you eventually move to another level. So there's need for youth to understand that they should strive to do what is youthful in their time. Some of you here, you are 34. In the next election, you will not be a young person. So the push is, can you move with speed and do what youth should do. When people are voting, go and vote. When people are participating in a budgeting process, go and participate. Let your voice be heard. Now, my next presentation then comes up with this. No, a quick push on the face of young people, like a challenge kind of. Commit to seek for information and enhance your informed political participation. Ensure you have the information. Look for information. You have an advantage of being able to scroll on a phone and get so much information. So just seek for information and enhance your informed political participation. Be involved and make a difference. Be involved. Don't say, there's someone who's supposed to be involved more than me. Now, let me give you some quick statistics I did. And really, this session is supposed to prepare for the next person who's coming to do a lot of election presentation. In Kenya, in 2022, this year actually, 16,095 candidates went to compete in the general election for 1,866 elective positions. So basically, this means the president, the deputy, the National Assembly, women rep, the National Assembly, and then you go to counties. So we have 1,866 elective positions. How many people went for that job? 16,095. Youth candidates, those who are between 18 to 35, were 4,508, which represent 28%. Now, I checked quickly on the website of the National Gender Equality Commission. They approximate that only 17 young people were elected. And when I talk about youth, it's below 35, not youthful. You have youthful leaders who are not below 35 years. So it roughly estimates that 17 people were elected out of 4,508. Remember, we had a big percentage of young people who are voters. And remember, we are 75% of the population. And remember, representation is a constitutional right. So you're not participating by a privilege. The push, a more push is that be part of the change you want to see. So that in Kenya, when you're talking about, let us apply for Hustler Fund, you are happy that you participated in the election. So and the other thing is that educate others about the needs to be involved. Young people have that privilege that they can just do a TikTok when dancing and showing, go and vote, go and vote, go and vote, go and vote, and have 500 viewers or likes, whom you think eventually these people were able to see what you are saying. So the biggest thing is that educate others about the need to be involved. But generally in Kenya in 2022, there was youth apathy. So I will stop there so that I allow, another session will come.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for the wonderful session. I am the next moderator for this session. You've done quite a wonderful job to give a quick highlight on the status of youth participation in the current general elections, in terms of the statistics, in terms of the challenges, the setbacks that we are seeing. But then you've also offered a very good way forward, the opportunities that we can tap into considering that this session is joined by young people across different counties. One of the things we must take note of is that we are coming from an election where people have been disappointed, others are celebrating the win, but then there's also a feeling that did we make a mistake, or are we giving ourselves a period to settle in and see what is going to happen? People think that 5 years is quite a lot of time. So thank you. Big picture. Maybe from your presentation, what I asked myself is from our own working spaces, from our own jurisdictions, what opportunity can we pick going forward? And for this, I would like to usher in the second speaker, that is Jaco Roet. And apologies if I have not mentioned that name correctly. From Accountability Lab, is an expert in governance and accountability. So, Mr. Jaco, the floor is all yours. Please share your reflections, and we look forward to having your session. For the participants, if you have any questions, please just drop them in the chat. We'll be following them up and we can answer them at the end of the session. So if Mr. Jaco, if you have any presentation, please share your screen. And I would like to request the participants, if you are not muted, please do so, or please control your background noise. Yeah, so Mr. Jaco, the floor is all yours, please.
Perfect.
Proceed.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
Paris, and really happy to be here today. And my apologies for the background noise. So Kennedy beautifully said that, you're not always a youth, you kind of transition into, a later phase. So just a quick personal background. On Saturday, I thought I was still a youth. But then I fell on a tennis court and managed to fracture my wrist and my back. So that is why I'm standing today. And that is also why I don't have a presentation, because, youthful people can play tennis. If you're above 40, you should not be doing stuff like this anymore. But thank you for that introduction, Kennedy. And I think, from Accountability Lab side, so just to introduce myself, I'm Jaco Roet, I'm South African. I work for Accountability Lab, and then I also teach with the School of Governance in Johannesburg at the University of the Witwatersrand. And one of the key components that Accountability Lab looks at is how to make governance work for ordinary people. So it's not just about, the policies and the procedures and the rules and regulations, but really seeing how that hits the ground, if that makes sense. And Kennedy, I think as you spoke through, there's a lot of similarities in terms of the Kenyan experience and the South African experience, in terms of this disconnect between young people and governance processes. So I am not going to take ages today, but there's a few components that I wanted to share from Accountability Lab's experiences that, we found work. The first component is that young people, we know this, but they bring in a different energy. Often they have experienced they can see the corruption, they can see the nepotism, they know the exclusion, but they come in from a less entrenched background, so they are more likely to push for change. So there is this energy within young people that can really affect change dramatically. Of course, politics does come into play. So in South Africa, I'm sure everyone knows about the economic freedom fighters. It's obviously presenting itself as a very left-wing option, but also a very youth-led option. Their current leader is my age. So we have to ask ourselves, is this really the youth leading, or is it just someone slightly younger leading? And I think the pitfalls that we see in political movements like these are that the accountability structures within that movement is still entrenched in the structural environment that we see around us. So, you know, a political movement like that presents itself as a youth movement, but it still has the drawbacks of an ageist movement in so many ways. So the real question now is, how do you harness that energy of the youth and push it towards accountability on all levels? So accountability to the state, accountability to the party, and also accountability to each other's as community members. So yes, the youth bring in a new energy, but there needs to be a next step. And this is where mentors and role models come in. And this is one thing that I'm grateful for, because as an aging youth, you know, I'm not going to be on the forefront anymore, chasing people around. But hopefully I can play a role in terms of helping young people not reinvent the wheel. So an example that we have in South Africa is we have a entrenched culture of gender-based violence. Oh yes, that's a very, Amondi, thank you for that question. My personal journey into politics, you know, just to segue there quickly, you know, as a young person growing up in South Africa, obviously I grew up in a very authoritarian environment. I'm a white male. I was a beneficiary of the system, but I was also keenly aware of the injustices of the system and kind of how the system ensured that people like me were put at the forefront of opportunities. And I think while at a personal level, I deal with this entrenched racism that was taught to me at a young age, I am also perturbed by the fact that the so-called revolutionary movements replicate those very structures of oppression. So this is my entry point into politics, is that even though I'm not interested in politics, my one lecturer always said politics is interested in you. And for that reason, I'm deeply committed to true civic accountability. We cannot hand over everything to politicians and treat them as our saviors, because our saviors will become our oppressors. So for me, it's really about civic power. Where do our power lie and where we go? So that links me to my second point. As an aging youth, you know, the role now is to help that people don't reinvent the wheel and make the same mistakes again and again and again. And I think these go into contextual conversations with young people to help understand where they are, but also to help to understand where they're going, and then just a bit of realism throughout. And one thing we do at Accountability Lab is we have a program called the Accountapreneurs. So these are social change makers that want to have impact, but, you know, just need a bit of support. And all we do there is, it's not a prescriptive environment. I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's really a listening space. We hear what people are doing. We connect them to other people that are trying to do stuff. And we just mirror and look at each other and learn by sharing, if that makes complete sense. For example, one of our entrepreneurs in South Africa deals with the issue of gender-based violence at universities. Gender-based violence at our universities are entrenched. It's a structural issue, and it's hidden by the political powers that guide those systems. And what Khorata is doing is she is building up a civic library, so to say, of what gender-based violence activists have done before her, so that people coming into the space can access that library, see what have been done, what are the stories, what were the problems, and then build further from there. So it's about laying a foundation that future people can build on, if that makes complete sense. Interrupt me at any stage if I'm going too fast here, and I'm jumping around. One thing is that we know that young people have valuable skills and they can build strong movements. We need to acknowledge the fact that there's agency here. It's not just like people sitting waiting for us to save them. And I think this is maybe where the political process disrupts stuff the most, because even in South Africa, we've always come to the space where we're waiting for the next Mandela. And we almost make these political heroes that sap energy away from what's happening at a grassroots level. Even if you listen about South Africa's liberation journey, of course, the African National Congress has played a big role in fighting for freedom in South Africa. But freedom was fought by many people that were not only part of the ANC. It wasn't just these fossils that are now in their 80s and has corrupted our country to the fact that we now sit with 12-hour blackouts a day. These old people are telling us that we owe our freedom to them. We don't owe our freedom to them. They were part of this freedom movement. We were all part of our freedom. And I think we need to acknowledge that young people can take back that agency and become actors, and they can build movements. The key component of that, and Kennedy, you mentioned it as well, is meeting young people where they are. So this is not only about technical trainings of advocacy and budgets and movement building. And, we're very good in terms of a Western dominant model of we need to do X, Y, and Z to people to empower them, right? And I think the key question there always for me is, if I empower you, who really holds the power? And that brings me back to my previous question. If I claim that I have empowered you, then I still hold the power. What we need to do is acknowledge where people are, what resources they have, what skills they have, and then you ignite the fire there. I'm so glad to see people from Kilifi and Kisumu on this call. We have wonderful entrepreneurs from these spaces. And one of my favorite, Nicholas is also an aging young person, I guess, but he runs the Manyata Youth Forum. And Manyata really just focuses on meeting young people where they are, giving them a voice with what they have. So it's through art, if it's through music, it is through dance. That is a space where young people are expressing themselves, and you create a platform for them to do that. Young people don't have to become budget experts. We don't have to train all young people up to be social accountability monitoring teams. Some will be that. We don't need to teach all of them to code, but we need to see, where are you right now? One of the exciting programs that we run is called the Voice to Rep program. So we work with young musicians. We walk a journey with them in terms of accountability issues that they are passionate about. And these young musicians literally do songs on accountability and corruption and how to fight it, which we then play on radio. And it means that young people can now go, oh, I relate to that message. I don't have to read international budget partnership booklet of 89 pages. I listen to the song, I talk to it about my friends. They strengthen this. In the civil service, we identify young civil servants that are doing exceptional work, that are committed to transparency, committed to building a better civil service. And through the Integrity Icon program, we encourage the public to nominate someone who made a difference in their lives. They raise this person up, and we tell their story. That's all we did. There's no prize. We just do a short video. This is what Nicholas is doing. Listen to the story, and people tell that story to each other. So it's almost like a storytelling exercise, and then connecting these civil servants to each other across countries so that they can help change the narrative about what's happening in the civil service. And then one caveat I put in, and it goes back to my second point. When we look at mentoring, we often think, okay, we need young people. So everyone above 40 cheers, you've had your run, off into the sunset with you. And I think one of the key things we need to look at on our work is intergenerational conversations. Even with the Accountapreneur program that is mainly focused on young people below 35, I'm the manager for that. I have included people that are quite older for the main reason that they bring in a different dialogue and experience set that young people often need. So it's also about creating that intergenerational dialogue, that we don't just get stuck in, young people and we are exceptional. There are a lot of issues that we face that are very similar. And then the final component, and it kind of wraps everything up that I've been talking about, is young people need to be agents. We use words like capacity building or empowerment or involvement, but we don't really link with what people value right now. Kennedy spoke about young people doing TikTok videos in downtown Nairobi. There are things that young people value immediately that they kind of just run with. And I think often we try to moderate conversations by trying to create age-old platforms and saying to people, well, just join this platform. And that doesn't work because it doesn't meet people where they are. So when we look at information, it's really that question about the right information at the right time and in the right format so people can act on it. Mijide today, Kiki is going to do graphic recording for us. Often for young people, a graphic novel is just so much easier to consume than a big budget report, a music video, a infographic. So we need to look at different ways to meet people where they are so they can actually act on what we put on the table. And if that doesn't resonate with them, then we need to go back to the drawing board and say, like, hey, we need to rethink this. Is this really meeting people where they are with what they need right now? And this is also, I think, with the voting block, and I think Kenya has done so much this year in terms of, even though the elections were tense, in my opinion, and this is a personal opinion, from previous years, Kenya's done amazing work this past election to really have conversations about tolerance and peace and acceptance instead of going into open battlegrounds, right? So I really want to applaud Kenya for that, and I think other countries need to learn. And I think a lot of young people were part of building that conversation about why should we be part of this process. But we also go like, okay, young people, they're just kids, 0 to 17, they kind of just hang around, blah, blah, blah. And now you turn 18, and now suddenly you have to vote and hold people accountable, and now you're a political agent, right? And I think we need to bridge that gap, that even though you only start voting, you can do a lot of things before you even start voting. And once you vote, your vote is not the final step in your journey as a citizen. And Kennedy, you mentioned that as well. Like 5 years can feel like a very long time, right? But the reality is that the work of democracy only starts in that 5 years. The celebrations with the new government is very, very short-lived. And what we need to do is to think about how can we engage people throughout that 5-year cycle so they can be active and not frustrated, but they can be participants in this and drivers of this process throughout. So I haven't spoken a lot about Accountability Lab's work, but we have three main streams. We have the knowledge component, which is where we kind of see what's happening out there. We have the communities component, and this is where we have civac teams that basically social accountability monitoring, going around gathering information. And we have campaigns. So the entrepreneurs is part of knowledge, civacs is part of communities, and then our campaigns is stuff like Voice to Rep or Integrity Icon, where we name and fame honest and exemplary civil servants. Integrity Icon is run in about 15 different countries. The Entrepreneur Program has been in about 12 different countries, but this year I think we're a bit less. So I don't want to waffle on too much, but if there are any questions or ideas, I would love to hear what people are thinking.
Very interesting, Mr. Yako. A comprehensive comparative analysis between the Kenya's political space to that of South Africa. So many commonalities, and I like the key points that you are bringing out that of course tend to align with the Kennedy's ideas. So the questions should be, what are we doing with the youth energy, the population, their role? And then how are we also building on the generational dialogue, where you are also coming in strongly to say that some of the experienced youth should come in as mentors and all the fresh ones to join the political space. But then there's a question that was raised in the chat. I don't know whether you would wish to speak about it in terms of what are the entry points for the youth population in terms of political participation and governance, and how can we also build grassroots agencies? And I guess most of the youth are doing that. It's only that sometimes they get frustrated because these youth groupings never see the light of the day, or they never feel recognized in the political spaces. And how we are meeting the youth where they are, I think that was quite clear, very comprehensive in terms of the kind of content we produce, whether it's music, whether it's popular versions of our documents. There's also an element of where do we find majority of the youth. So quite comprehensive. I'm still looking at whether there are people with the questions. Maybe you can have your hands raised, or we can wait till the end of the presentation and have all the questions responded at the same time. Maybe what I would ask for the two speakers to maybe resonate is that I see the role of youth in these two different countries as a bit unique. From history, I don't know whether it's the fact, South African liberation seems to have been fought hard by the young people, unlike Kenya, and I don't know whether this is true. Could this be the reason why the youth participation in politics in Kenya is not so active, because they have not been part of the journey, the history of Kenya's independence? Could this be the reason? What would be your views from the two speakers? We can share the questions till the last session. And for now, I'd like to invite the third speaker, that is Caroline Chege, an expert in election and Kenya's politics with focus on women. So Caroline, if you are in, please feel free to share your presentation. And we are ready to listen to you. So Carol.
Thank you so much. It was interesting listening to the two speakers. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate. I hope I'm clear. I am Caroline Chege, and it's a joy to be with you today to speak about what I'm most passionate about. As I was listening to Kennedy, it was quite interesting listening to his perspective, because I come from a different school of thought. So I started being active in national politics in my early 20s when I was in university, and I was in university in England. hey, don't lose me, I'm still in Kenya. So what happened was, I was doing a degree in business, and then I decided to be active in politics because of friends and many other interests. So this is not about university politics. I was active in national politics. To cut a long story short, I became a shadow chancellor in England, and I was very active in the Labour Party. So I saw myself climbing up the, how can I say, the UK politics, and I knew my heart was in development. So fast forward, I came back to Kenya, decided to vie for a political seat in Kenya in 2013. My background is that I'm from Kajiado County. This is a very patriarchal community. I'm actually answering the question of, I really love the question of the person who asked about the entry point. So my introduction is the entry point. So what happened was, through personal interest, commitment, and dedication, you know, we like to throw sweets to young people in order for them to come into politics, but nobody throws sweets to young people to participate in business. So politics is like being in an aggressive business. The person who reaps the greatest reward is the person who put the greatest commitment, the greatest efforts. So I will give you an example in Kenya. Let's look at Honorable Johnson Sakaja. Sakaja was the chair of TNA in his 20s. How did he start? By being a driver. We were asked about entry point. Entry points are never lucrative. He started by being a driver of the party. Look at Sakaja's journey. He ended up being the chair of TNA. He ended up being an elected member of parliament while in his 20s. And then he ended up being an elected senator. As you see it right now, he's the governor of Nairobi. Whoever who puts in the greatest effort gets the greatest rewards. And I really want to encourage, I'm seeing a lot of young people, they're not even online. Jaco and Kennedy have given us such great insights. And most of the people who have the video on are the moderators and the speakers. And I'm wondering, these young people, do you know you can get, if you multitask, you'll never learn something. If you can just give these few minutes all of your attention, you never know, you can just get an insight that could transform your mind, shift everything so that you can stop hustling, so that you can be able to know, so that you can be able to be influential or impactful. So to cut a long story short, fast forward, 2013, vying in Kajiado County as a member of County Assembly, I was only female on the ballot box. We were about 12 of us and I was second, but that second, it was blood, sweat, and tears, plus being called Kairetu. If you're in Kenya, you know what Kairetu means. So I was told Kairetu cannot be given number 1, so I was given number 2. 2017, I vied for senator in the same county. Again, the only female on the ballot box. And I know it takes to be on the ballot box in a patriarchy community. Honestly, it's blood, sweat, and tears. There was no organization there to help me. So I'm here just to speak to Kennedy personally, because, you know, he was like a youth in this nation. And a majority of the youth in a room of thousands of young people who are dedicated and passionate and so focused about politics. We have given our lives to this. It is either I die or die. Like, yeah, life, how can I say? My life has been threatened so many times. Like, if you want to finish me, you just finish me. I'm not like moved by words. So there are youth who have given everything, not just to have grassroots organizations that are for politics, but, you know, approaching our county governors, fighting for development, being on the ballot box. So I'm going to try and now move to my presentation. Okay, this screen sharing, I hope it works. Okay, it's saying that only the host can share in this meeting. Can I be allowed to share? Haran, can you please allow me?
Yeah, sure. We are adding you as a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'll try and be fast. I will not go through the entire presentation. Completely refused to let me share. Okay. Voila. You can see my presentation?
Yeah, sure.
Everyone can see it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, awesome. I'm going to fast forward and I'm just going to point out a few highlights. And in between, it's a dialogue of my journey. Mine is more practical. I'm not in an office. I'm more at the grassroots. I'm more active in the political party. So mine is much more practical. So is everyone, people can hear me? So I'll start with the political heritage of Kenya. Do you know that this country was built on nationalism, not anything, ethnism? You know, right now we are so, if you know ODM, you know who are the people in ODM. If you know Jubilee, who are the people in Jubilee. If Wiper, who are the people. But when Kenya was getting independence on December 12th, which was yesterday, some years ago, it was built on nationalism. And then another political heritage that we have in 1997 was when the first woman vied for presidency. She got over 400,000 votes, and that was Honorable Charity Ngilu. Actually, a bit about her story that I heard from her was that on the day of the election, there were some women, many women from her region came to dance with her and celebrate with her. And you know what happened? When the women were dancing, men were sent and they raped the women who were present. And that was the price she had to pay. So I'm going to talk about the journey of women, the price they have to pay. When you see people say, oh, Her Excellency Governor Ngilu, nobody knows the tears that she's had to pay to get where they are. So the next slide is about 2002 elections, when they were forming the National Alliance Rainbow Coalition. How many people can spot women? Okay, let's move forward. I'm not going to talk too much about it. So some of the things that this multi-party 2002 government delivered was the introduction of the reform program for the governance, justice, law, and order sector. They were very keen on promoting fundamental rights and freedoms, and they enhanced the space for participatory democracy and general enjoyment of rights. There was no more fear for you to form a party, freedom to speak, freedom of speech. There were many freedoms came with 2002. As young people, I'm just giving you a bit about the background. I'm not going to talk about the post-election violence. The information is there. So let's talk about the 2010 Constitution. It talks about equality and inclusion. And I just want to highlight to young people, during the pandemic, the National Awards for Equality and Inclusion in Kenya were actually giving organizations awards. And in the midst of giving organizations award, I was actually awarded for my work. And I'm not an organization, I'm just an individual in patriarchy community trying to give my best so that youth and women can be heard in patriarchy regions. So the Constitution provides for especially persons with disabilities, PWDs to be represented. Do you know there are 0.9 million Kenyans living with a form of disability. But I don't believe this is the accurate. These are just the ones that the census have been able to reach to. I am sure there are probably 1 million more that the census has not been able to reach to. Are they being represented? So as young people, as you're thinking about what is the entry point of politics, the entry point of politics is think about what is the gap. The Constitution has allowed for equality and inclusion, but PWDs are not being included in politics, in elections. So as a young person, how can you be able to integrate the Constitution and the gap for PWDs? And also, as I'm talking, I want to highlight, both of my speakers shared about young people being on TikTok. I personally believe that TikTok and all the other platforms, Twitter, can be integrated because you cannot get young people out of TikTok or Twitter or IG. The best thing is how can these platforms be used to add value to young people to participate in politics and in governance. So how can Twitter and TikTok be able to influence and impact young people to actively participate in politics? For instance, public participation. As you can see with the diagram, public participation, this is just a diagram because I come from Kajiado County. There is no woman who can ever be sat at the front. Patriarchy will not accept. Women sit at the back and they do not raise their hands. Young people will rarely be given the microphone to speak. So TikTok, IG, and all these social media platforms are a platform where young people can, it is their prerogative to integrate these platforms for their benefit. Because young people, let me tell you something, you disregard politics, you disregard elections at your own deterrent, because as we can see, the government has disregarded you. When you participate actively and you participate proactively, not reactively, the government will regard you. Have you ever noticed that the government always recognizes the groups that participate the most in politics? But the youth, because they're not united in their way forward, it is hard for the government to truly understand what it is the youth truly want in this nation, because they are fragmented. And then also youth are easily swayed. But that's a topic for another day. So let's move on to the 2/3 gender rule. 2/3 gender rule is basically not having more than 2/3 of one gender. 2/3 is not about favoring one gender, it's about balancing both genders in this nation. To date, this was implemented, in the 2010 constitutional framework. Till to date, this has never been implemented because the day for voting for 2/3 gender rule, the male MPs and some female are never found in parliament to vote for it. The 2010 constitution, the legislative framework governing the Kenya elections. I won't talk much about it because also Kennedy kind of touched about it. The IEBC, we have the IEBC Act, the Political Parties Act, you have Elections Act. There are so many laws that have been revised and support the elections. But do we still have free and fair elections in this nation? Would you say that at the county level and at the national level? Would you say our political elections framework is free and fair, and yet we have all this legislation around it? Because of time, I'm just bypassing. I won't get too much into it. So what are the roles of the IEBC? I know all of us know IEBC. If I hid this screen away, would we all know what is the role of the IEBC? Do you know they develop the code of conduct for candidates, for parties, contesting elections? They regulate the amount of money that may be spent on behalf of a candidate or party. I would say that is their role, but it is yet to implement it. I do not think they regulate the amount of money. I don't even believe they truly know how much money is spent. Facilitation of the observation, monitoring, evaluation of elections. They do their best to their ability, but politics in Kenya is deep. regulations of nomination of candidates by political parties and settlement of electoral disputes other than petitions. You can go through this and know all the roles of the IEBC. Today, Kennedy mentioned about the executive, this we all know. I really want to focus on a specific area, and that is how can youth actively participate within the political parties? Number one, young people, please join a political party. For instance, I'll give you an example. I am a Christian, and there is no Christian party in this nation. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there is no clean party. Even in the Bible or whatever you believe in, there is no perfect party. But if you believe that party is not a good party, why don't you join that party and be the light in that party? Or be the, how can I say, or be the one who brings change in that party. I think for young people, they are looking for a perfect party, and there's no such thing as a perfect party or a clean party. What you have to, when you join a party, look at the ideology and decide, or the leader of the party, do they uphold your values? So as a young person, you've asked, what is your entry point to joining a party? I remember in 2013, I decided to join NAC party. This is a party for Honorable Martha Karua. I decided to go visit the party. I visited the director of the party. I joined the party. I created networks. I even met her, we call her Madam President. I met Honorable Martha Karua, and to date, she's been a mentor and a friend since 2012. So number one is take the initiative. Don't wait for an international organization to join you with a party. No, all these political parties are somewhere in every location in this country. Go knock on their doors. If you don't know what party to join, choose 3 parties, go and visit them, meet their directors, meet their chairs, meet their leaders, find out what they are doing, what they believe in. So, and then find out how you can participate. Do you want to be a digital campaigner? Do you want to run for office? Do you want to volunteer for their meetings? Do you want to help them fundraise, write proposal? Do you want to help them be a grassroots mobilizer or an urban mobilizer? Do you want to make volunteer party meetings for youth so that young people can know what they are doing? Do you want to do cleanup? So basically, when the party sees you active, doing something, engaging, you've invested in the party, then they will listen to you. So, and also as a young person, don't just do it to gain visibility, do it for impact. And also the accountability you want to be it. Don't join a party and then be embezzling funds. Even if you're given, for instance, 100,000 to do a project, be faithful in it. You cannot be pointing fingers as young people, and yet you're also participating in the eating. So the next slide talks about strengthening women's political participation. You see, the example I gave was of Johnson Sakaja. Sometimes when I look at my political journey and the women around me, it brings me to tears, because the price that we women have to pay, my God. So some of these practices, I must congratulate the former government and the present government. They have done a bit of these practices in order to strengthen women's political participation. Please, the men in the room, many of you, don't lose me when I say women's political participation. Mostly I mean young women's political participation. So don't lose me in the room. And also when I talk about women, please know women are not homogeneous. So let's demand for women's inclusion in transition institutions, especially constitution drafting bodies. Sorry to say, you see, our present government, they did a whole manifesto for women, how women will be 50% of the government. The government is already in place. Look at CAS. The chief administrative secretaries, they are not 50%. Look at the PSs, they're not 50%. Look at the cabinet secretaries, they're not 50%. And when we talk 50%, it's not that we want to have an upper hand, we just want equal representation. Because when I look at my county where I come from, and many other counties in nomadic areas in this nation, there is no proper access to water, no proper access to health. But if a woman is sat in those rooms, the way a man thinks and the way a woman thinks are valuable, but they think differently. And both, how can I say, both thought patterns, both ideas, both opinions are needed in a room in order for our counties to be balanced in terms of development. So establish election mechanism that advance women's presentation. Honestly, when I read some of these things that I find in our constitution, I will give you an example. Even as I talk about strengthening women's political participation, when I remember when I decided I would vie for Senate in 2016, and the candidature was for 2017. So I remember I didn't even have the funds, but I was in a training program, and I remember saying, even if my party made the cost to be $500,000 Kenya shillings, I will find it, because there has to be a woman on the ballot box. And I remember when 2017 finally came, you have to pay a certain amount. For instance, for MCA, often to get your party ticket of the party, it's often 25,000. To be an MP, it's often 100,000. To be senator, it's often 250,000. To be governor is, I think, $500,000, and then to be president is 1 million plus. So these are just the rates of the main parties. Some political parties, they make it more affordable for youth and young women. So my party was 250,000, and I remember I paid. And mine is one of the main parties. I'm not going to mention because I really want your attention. I really don't want to sound biased of any party. So I paid my money, and I remember that evening, I got a phone call from somebody from the political party, and they were like, why have you made such a poor decision? This is a political party. They asked me why I have made such a poor decision to pay for Senate candidacy, that I should have waited to be nominated. Moving on swiftly. So Kennedy, I hope you will see me as a statistics in your, approaches to provide access to women in government using policies. So as young people who are interested in policy making, these are ways that we can use policies to give access to young women in government, or even youth with people living with disability. Encourage political parties to move female candidates to the top of the election list. This is the party list. Encourage head of state and government to exercise gender parity in executive positions. Yeah, some of these boardrooms in this nation have got like 2 women and like 9 men. The voice of the women will never be represented. Create local political structures as entry points, which is like nominated member of county assembly. Advocate for and support ministries of women affairs and gender focal points in other ministries to advance gender mainstreaming. So gender mainstreamings, my dear youth, is, let me give you an example. When Nairobi was being created, the city of Nairobi, I can imagine when it was being created in the 60s. Let's just envision this. There was a boardroom of Kenyans who were designing this city. Do you think there was a woman in that room? I have a feeling there was not even one woman, because then there was not even one woman member of parliament. So gender mainstreaming is just ensuring, like when we are building cities, we are building structures, we are building institutions, that we have thought of every Kenyan, the PWDs, the women, the men, every person has been thought about. So that's what gender mainstreaming is, because if we build institution just with one lens, then we are doing a disfavor to our nation. So another area is to include indicators on women political participation in national development plans and poverty reduction strategies. And lastly, we require trainers and capacity builders to track the percentage of male and female participants in political and government development programs. I'd like today, for instance, to know how many women are present here and how many men are present. In terms of facilitators and speakers, what is the ratio of men to women? And also in terms of participants, what is the ratio of men to women? Let's just, hold ourselves accountable just within this small 20 to 25 people group here right now. Let's see how many we are. If somebody can do for me that math, that would be awesome. Sorry, I'm going so fast because I know my time will be cut. So how can we develop competency of women candidates? Number one, sustained and consistent methodological training with female candidates yields better results. Yes, in this nation, we do have training for women, but it can be very haphazard. You can go for 1 or 2 trainings, but if you're taken through, like I hope when IAC is doing, the International Alumni Center is doing this training, that they will follow up with you, that it will be a consistent training. It's not a one-off, because one-off doesn't really bear fruits. But if you continue with the same people and have like 3 or 4, 5 meetings in a year and follow up, you're able to yield better results. So political mentoring programs prepare women for political work, train women on how to fundraise. It is not easy, as you can hear. If a woman wants to vie for governor, that means they have to raise, just within the political party, that's the party ticket is $500,000 Kenya shillings. You've not even calculated transversing the entire county. It costs millions. So how can women create these networks? Because just to be practical, I come from Kajiado County. When a man wants to vie for a political seat, he can sell land, his land, because most of the people who are from Rift Valley areas, in the rural areas especially, they have land. May not be much land, but they have land. They can sell 1 or 2 acres, and you can get a couple of money to do your governor or senatorial campaigns. But when a woman wants to do campaigns, she has to seek for permission from her husband to even sell a goat, if she'll even be allowed to buy. So when a man wants to buy, he can sell all his cattle. Nobody will ask him. When a woman wants to buy, she has to ask the clan for permission. She has to ask the husband for permission. And the chances of them saying yes, they may say yes, but a half-hearted yes. But yes without financial support, yes without their blessing does not go far. Because you cannot even sell 1 chicken, 1 hen in that compound without the man's consent. So are you seeing why when I talk about young women, I hope everybody's on the same page, that I'm not trying to favor one gender. I am trying to balance. I will keep on giving examples of Rift Valley and Kajiado County because that is where I'm most familiar with. I come from Kajiado County. We've had 3 elections so far. We have 25 wards. The men and women, I've seen people from Machakos County, Kwale County. I'd like you to tell us how many constituencies are in your county? How many wards are in your county? Are you familiar with such information? So in my county, we have 5 constituencies and 25 wards. Every constituency has 5 wards. So that makes a total of 25 wards. No woman has ever been elected in the smallest seat member of county assembly, not even 1 woman. So in the last 3 elections, it's always 25 elected men, 25. I'm the one who came the closest by being number 2, but still, how can I say, almost doesn't count. So moving on, one thing I'd really like to mention is providing opportunities to foster policy and budget dialogue, allowing for young women and also youth to really be present, like today, in terms of policy and budget dialogue and making. It's really important that young people, you participate in the budget process so that you can speak up for your needs and also engage in the budget dialogue. Women are not homogeneous. They are differently abled women. They are older women, younger women, marginalized women, vulnerable women, casual laborers, the ones we call mama mboga. So when you hear me saying women, it's a whole array, it's a whole diverse arena of Kenyans. So question to the youth who are listening to me. What are some practices and internal policies besides the adoption of the party list? We all know the party list quota implemented by political parties. What can be considered to increase women's political participation? When you listen to my story, I don't have monopoly of knowledge or understanding. I may have over 10 years of experience, but I don't have monopoly. As a young person, what do you think are the policies that could help young women who are entering politics so that they don't have to go through the hell that some of us have gone through. And even if they go through the hell, that maybe they may end up like, you know, being an elected governor, then it's worth it. If I was elected governor of Kajiado, then it is worth it. But if I never get elected, then is the price really worth it? So I have a statistic for you here to just review. So I'm going to read it to you. 80% of female member of parliaments in Africa have experienced psychological violence in parliament. Not in the streets, not in downtown Nairobi, in parliament. 67% have been subjected to sexist behavior or remarks. 39% have faced sexual violence in parliament. Alarmingly, the main perpetrators of this violence are the male counterparts. So violence against MPs is a global phenomenon. So as youth, when we're doing our TikTok and IG, how can we reach? Because this is a conversation for both male and women. I'm not pointing fingers at male, but you know, the numbers do the talking. So I believe these are male people who have actually been elected and people see them as leaders. How can they bring transformational change? How can a leader who is a member of parliament or a governor bring transformational change to my county, or leave alone transformational change? How can my county governor or my member of parliament stop sexual violence in my county, and yet he's a perpetrator of sexual violence in parliament? Are you seeing the quagmire? Food for thought. This is a study by the Interparliamentary Union and the African Parliamentary Union. So review of violence against women. I don't want to talk too much about it. I think you can go through that. What can be done? Strategically strong and autonomous civil society and political movement. And this is where young people, this is also an entry point for you. You know, I love how Jaco said that he's no longer going to fight on the streets. I also no longer can fight on the streets. I've lost those years where my life used to be threatened and used to fight. I no longer do that. So my role currently is to really build young people, build the capacity, share my mistakes, share my lessons learned, and just encourage young people. Like the political and elections arena is just like the aggressive business arena. Fight for it, you reap reward. Be passive, you get eaten up. So when you push for change, you get a reward for it. So as young people, form movements that are able to mitigate the lack of party effectiveness in increasing young women's political participation and also young people. Join a political party, and you know, as youth, form a strong movement within your party caucus. There's always a youth caucus. If you see majority of the young people who you know are nominated MPs from the last parliament, they are the most vocal within ODM, Jubilee, Wiper, Ford Kenya, NAC, all these parties. The young people who are the most vocal are the ones who get nominated into parliament, and then they're able to make the change they want to. It is not easy, but you have to be resilient. But as a young people, you do know in life, there is nothing easy. Even just going back to TikTok, TikTok is actually a business. There are those who are there to just pass time, but there are many Kenyans who are making money in TikTok and YouTube. So decide, are you going to use it for leisure or as a movement of change? So this is a final slide. So which can be a group activity, but you can always do it later. So what are the measures? This is the final. I see my time is up. This is the final. What are the measures and practices we can adopt and support to reduce violence against women in politics? Actually, if I'm never in the ballot box, it's mostly because of violence against women in politics. I must say the violence is acceptable, unfortunately, because I have gone to a police station to report, and I'm not the only one. Many people go to report. And I remember the police officer asking me, What is it I did to deserve to be attacked by my opponent? What is it that I did to my opponent? So it's a whole realm of bringing education and awareness to this nation. But as young people, your creative measures probably have more impact. What publicity measures could be put in place? What policy implementation could be done? What can you do in social media, print, digital media? What advocacy and lobbying can you do to reduce the violence against young women in politics? This is an area to partner with other organizations, international agencies, local CBOs, and yeah, find the change you want to do. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your time. Let me end the share. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I have enjoyed this time. If you have any questions, please share with me. You can write them down at the question time. I'll be able to respond to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol, for such an insightful session. Yes, sorry. I had joined with two devices because of network issues. So, a story of resilience, telling your journey through the struggles, the pain you've gone through. But I would just pose something to you. Do you think your struggle has paid back? Or you feel you've lost? Do you think it is worth the fight for a woman? I leave that to you.
No, I'd like to answer that. Exposure can never be lost. Exposure can never be lost. It has made me an expert without a political degree. I understand politics inside out, up and down, in depth. So exposure and experience can never be lost. It has given me great networks, and your networks are your network. It's opened for me doors. I've also been trained. I also, how can I say, I stayed in Germany for a while and learned how Germans do their politics, and many other nations. It's opened up for me doors internationally. And also the greatest joy is that I'm able to impact other young people so that they don't have to, they'll find the path has been opened and there's light and not darkness. When I started, there was nobody to hold my hand because the older women just were staying with older women. I didn't have another young person. So I'm able to help younger people navigate the political and elections path.
Yeah.
So it is totally worth it. It is totally worth it. Scars are always worth it.
Sure, that's what I wanted to hear, because within that struggle, there's always a success at the end of it. We see a lot of challenges as women, and of course, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Juliana Kio. I'm a public policy and gender and social inclusion expert. This is a space I have worked for quite some time. I understand the struggles. I can relate to your story. I can connect with all the speakers' conversations and ideas that they have brought out here. And what I can say is that every struggle has an answer. Every story has a result at the end of the day. So there are so many reactions. I just want to see the reactions that we can maybe read and see whether the speakers can respond to the questions. And of course, there was somebody who asked about where is the entry point, and you shared that very clearly. Then the other question is, how do we effectively balance the economic realities and youth political participation? The question of unemployment, inflexible work schedule, shoestring budgets, which mostly affect the youth, and it makes it impossible for the ordinary youth to participate in politics. It's then unfortunate, that is what Amondi says, how to ensure that the young people can participate. How do we remedy this? Maybe in a minute or two from the three speakers, if you have something to say, or whoever is ready to respond to that, please take the floor. I know we are past time, and I want us to end in the next maybe 3 minutes. Kennedy, Carol, Yako, who wants to take the floor, please?
I don't know. Allow me to respond to some of the questions. I said, without money, then politics is not your space. Yeah, I think this is hard. I appreciate the person who is raising it. But the honest conversation is that, and I'm saying this because I trained prior to 2022 election. I was actually implementing women, youth, and persons with disability program, basically to ensure that they get into politics, into elective politics. And I interacted with youth from all major political parties in Kenya. Kenya has 90 political parties, but we are working with around 10. And the honest conversation is that even if you are not giving out money to the people coming to your meetings, you even need money to call people. You need money to have a secretariat. Just a secretariat could be a working secretariat, just two of your friends. They will not, you need money for your security. So my advice, or then our general advice was, if you want to vie for 2027 election, start now. Some of the resources are ongoing. You build social capital. But what we saw in many of the young people, someone was just popping up emotionally, and you say you want to become an MCA, you want to become an MP, and basically some of them are also coming back to us and saying, now I'm in this state. How do I get out? And I appreciate the lady who has shared, my fellow presenter who has shared on the issues of women. Actually, I know in Kenya, it's not that we are making baby steps. What I say, baby steps, but firm steps toward inclusion. We saw several women now are governors, men are women reps. Eventually we'll reach there. But the question that maybe I pose a lot is, how many youth women are there? I think that is the bigger question. And it's a slow process. How do we increase representation of youth in the electoral process? The question is, when we are heading to election, there was a lot of, how do you call it? Potential young people who are to go for elective position. Basically, you are 50 people who are on ODM ticket. You are sat down, and we could hear some of these stories. You have never been subjected to a consensus process. There is no guideline for consensus process in electoral process in Kenya, but you are told you are going for consensus. And some of the stories we are hearing, some youth, when they were being called on the bench to be interviewed, some of them just start crying. And the honest truth is that those who are on the bench, they were telling us, crying only helped women. I think there's strength when a woman cry. But for men who are youthful, anyway, this is not to make any gender utterances, but that is what they were telling us. Women could be listened to carefully. But many of them, yes, Julian, I've seen, but many of them were actually being edged out on consensus ground. Our real advice is for young people, start small. In 2022, there was a big limelight on being an MP, being a senator, being a governor. But people did not care much about being an MCA. So start there. It is still a representation at the county level. So that I don't take a lot of time, let me stop there.
Thank you, Kennedy. I would like to give 1 minute to Caroline and Yako. So that we can finalize, we are also considering the next session, please.
Caroline, after you.
I was waiting for you to speak. I have seen a question about the economic value of youth participation in politics, and that's a really good question. The economic value about youth participation in politics is this. It is simple and direct. It's actually not complex. When youth participate in politics and they're active about the priority area of a nation, every nation has got agendas. We know the agendas of this nation. There is youth unemployment, access to capital for business setups and safety, security. So when youth participate in politics, they end up being in government. When you're in government, you're able to make decisions about where funding goes for what. So when you're in a role of decision making, you decide the infrastructure, you decide where the capital of this nation or where the budget of this nation goes to. And when money is put into youth unemployment, towards youth employment, then the youth benefit. So that is the economic advantage. Because to be honest, as young people, you can have the greatest idea, but if you do not have a say in the ministry that is facilitating, there is no budget towards whatever project or whatever implementation or whatever agenda. Youth in this nation have cried unemployment for decades. But are you sat in the Ministry of Labor? Do you have any connection with ILO, International Labour Organization? Do you have any networks? And then under that, what is the budget for youth unemployment? Do you even understand if there is a budget in order? What are the structures and mechanisms that our government in Kenya has put in order to curb youth unemployment or to increase employment of youth in private and both government institutions? I don't just mean taking 2 interns per year. No, that's not what I mean. A proper mechanism and structure that will be able to take in the youth who are skilled white collar jobs and blue collar jobs. What is the budget that has been put in there? So when youth participate in politics, then they're able to sit in those boardrooms where these decisions are made. But if you are forever at the grassroots complaining and you're not participating politically, that is just the sad reality of these things. So that is where I'd like, it's kind of very straightforward. It's like, I'll keep on giving an example with Honorable Sakaja. Now he's the governor of Nairobi. Now he will say, money will go to street lighting, money will go. So that is the economic benefit. Where the economic agenda and the youth political participation agenda, or if it is, for instance, the sitting government right now promised youth that they would get no interest capital. I think as young people, you should have analyzed before you were given that there's no such thing as no interest. There's no such thing as no interest capital. Now the government has come into play, and now they have said that if they give you capital, you have to pay. And the capital that is being given is very little, but there is interest. So as young people, were you in these boardrooms when these decisions are made? Because right now, young people are crying foul that they voted for the government. If your role is only voting, but not sitting in decision-making tables, that is where you're disenfranchised. Thank you. Jaco, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very quick, and I just wanted to encourage people that I know that we can often get stuck in our own country examples, but just listening to Kennedy today, and especially Caroline, there are so many connections between what young people are going through in Kenya and in South Africa. There's so many overlaps in what women are going through in Kenya and in South Africa. And, this just highlights again how we need to listen to each other, how we need people that have walked this journey to talk to us, how we need those mentors. So we can think about new ways to address age-old problems. There was that one question about maybe South Africa political participation amongst young people are higher because they were more involved in the struggle. Young people are not registering to vote in South Africa, and they are not voting. They are also delinking from the process. So yeah, I don't think we have the solution. I think the key thing is that we have gatekeepers that masquerade as representative of women or representative of disabled people or of young people, and that keeps broad participation from happening. So yeah, just to say there's a lot of connections. I've really enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yako, Madam Caroline, and Mr. Kennedy for such wonderful presentations. You are such an inspiration to young people, and we look forward to listening to you in future sessions that we might organize in future. So I would like to appreciate Harun and Nema for organizing such an event, and all the participants for your patience and also actively participating. So I would like to hand over the mic to Harun, since we are already 15 minutes past the time, so that we can prepare for the next session. So Harun, please.
Hi, thank you so much, Juliana, for moderating the today's session. So we are breaking for 5 minutes, exact 5 minutes. Now it's 12:05. Let's come back by 12:11. The next session will be moderated by Asia Mustafa. Asia Mustafa will come with more details. We'll have speaker one session, youth leader sharing his journey concerning advocacy. And then after that, we will have a breakout session. In this breakout session, Ms. Wakesho will help us to divide us into breakout session, and we will be harvesting using the Jamboard. Yeah, so let's break up for 5 minutes and let's come back by 12:12. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me. So we have just divided you into the breakout session. We are requesting if you can join to your groups. Please, if you can hear me, we request you to join into your groups, please. Michael, Catherine, Polycarp, Fred, Caroline, David. We're requesting if you can join to your specific groups. Caroline, if you can hear me. Fred, if you can hear me. Michael, if you can hear me, please join to your specific breakout session. Fred, Michael, can you hear me? join to a specific group.
Who is ready to present their findings from their breakout sessions? Thank you. Session 2, anyone who's ready? Presenter for session 2?
Session 2, was that me and Caroline?
No, I mean for group presentation, group 1 and 2.
Group presentation.
Sorry.
Yeah. Perfect.
Grace Orao from Kisumu was leading us. Grace, would you mind presenting what the group shared?
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, though a lot of the, the comments are on the Jamboard, so I'll simply just go through them. But a majority of the young people felt like, especially when it comes to challenges that young people face in the political governance and leadership space. One is that the space is so anti-young people. However much young people are the majority, but there's a lot of... Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Grace, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Someone had unmuted. So yeah, so one of the challenges that was outrightly shared was the fact that there's a lot of, youth and women issues relating to the fact that if you are a young person, there are some stereotypes that are attached to that. For example, if you're a man, then you're not married, then you cannot apply for a political seat. And if you have to, then you have to prove your community, that you're right and fit for that particular position. And if you are a woman, then you're young, it even becomes a double trouble because for them, they'll be looking down upon you when it comes to you being a youth. And youth are most of the time associated to be, lazy, to be, incapable. And if you are a woman, it means you're even weak. So it's sort of double trouble for being a young woman. And the team also shared on, how to then counter such narratives of young people not being able to, undertake certain leadership positions, especially in the political space, is, to just have an ally, having somebody in the political space who is pro young people, who supports young people, and also having them not only as a mentor, because also mentorship means different things to different people. And for us, we're just looking at how those young people could act as our ally, as young people, and also to help us put the agenda, push the agenda of young people all being in the space, decision-making space, and not just, outside the room, but also inside the room, so that we can have our opinions heard, but not just heard, but also picked and reflected in the reports. The other thing that was shared was there's a lot of competition. It feels like this competition in the space whereby, young people are meant to also, prove themselves, probably twice or thrice much better. And for women, it's even worse. So for young people, this is a challenge because it doesn't need to feel like a competition. It doesn't need to look like a competition because young people, as much as there was not so much participation, especially in the liberation of Kenya compared to SA, it doesn't mean that we are not supposed to be meaningfully engaged, especially in governance and leadership. And especially in the Kenyan context, one of the solutions or other potential interventions for that was, young people picking up a seat, carrying up a seat, and you find yourself in those particular, engagement. It may not even be at a national level. And you're just saying how sometimes leadership even looks like you participating in a church engagement, in a school engagement. You're a board member at a primary school, in a youth group. It starts from there, and then ultimately you grow to become the person you want to become. And just like Caroline gave the, example of Sakaja, Honorable Sakaja, he did not just wake up one morning and become who he is today. He had to, follow certain channels, which sometimes were quite toxic, a lot of challenges, and he became. So, as young people, what we're just saying is that there's more to do from us than from the space in terms of older people who are in the space, and sort of just putting ourselves out there and aligning to things that are of our values, but also pushing for that which the change that we want to see. Lastly, we also talked about awareness creation, which would also be a potential challenge. Awareness creation, especially for young people who do not have the knowledge. Yes, knowledge is there, but there are young people, certain caliber of young people who do not have access. And even if they do not, they have the access, you find that there's also limitation when it comes to the extent to which you can acquire knowledge. And this looks like sometimes the education system, which for a very long time has made us to become employees and not employers. So sort of to just rewrite this narrative and have young people become part of the solution and not the problem. Lastly, we were talking about the policies. We were saying how the policies, especially the youth policies, for example, I think National Youth Council is currently having young people participate in a youth policy development in 27 counties in Kenya. And you realize that honestly, I think much of the conversation is on what do you want as a young people. But then, if it's taken up there, if the report is taken back to the NYC, you realize that there is a complete dimension when it comes to what we say we want vis-a-vis what the analysis of that report. So there's always the need for involving the young people in all stages, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, until the policy is completed and reviewed and implemented and monitored. That is what I would call a complete engagement, a meaningful engagement of a young person. So the policies also needs to also have a voice of young people, women, people living with disability, sort of a diverse group of people who are directly affected with these particular challenges that we're trying to face. I think I'll stop at that unless there's something I've left out that someone would want to just come through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace, for the presentation. Very insightful and comprehensive. For session 1, is there a volunteer who is willing to present some of the findings that we had discussed in the first session? Okay, I think I'll just summarize a bit from what we had discussed from session 1. Not so much difference from what Grace Orao has presented. We touched on issues on people with disabilities and their active involvement in politics. Our expert elaborated for us that we are doing something, but we are not yet there in terms of involving them actively in politics. A comment also was raised regarding youth. I mean, how promising some youth can get when vying for an elective position, but when they get elected, it ends up differently, and they don't end up delivering on some of the promises they had kept before getting the seat. And what does that mean for youth in terms of involvement in politics? And the third pointer was youth. Generally, youth, they feel like they're compelled to adhere by the rules of the political parties. And Mr. Kennedy elaborated this and mentioned that if they are not willing to go by the rules of the system, then an option is, they're given an option to go as an independent participant. And so those are some of the issues that were raised in session 1. Not so much from session 1. One more thing from one of our participants mentioned the role of media in, let me just get the question. A quick comment on the new political media and how the same has influenced the modern governance. We've been seeing from the last election, we've seen how the media, especially social media, was used in terms of getting voters to come and vote. So many misinformation, disinformation. So how has the media been used as a tool for politics and governance, especially by the youth in Kenya? So I'd like to call in Mr. Harun Modena, who will lead us in this session. Thank you.
Maybe before he comes up,
Yes, Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, just a small clarity. I actually said that if you are a youth and you want to be independent, the best way is to opt to go as an independent candidate. Then that one gives you an opportunity to be independent even in parliament. So I just wanted clarity. And
okay.
Then, and then a quick one. Someone also mentioned what is the role of nomination of seats? I don't know, I'm just finishing it. What is the role of nomination seats?
Nominated MCAs and MPs.
Yes.
Yeah.
The constitution indicates that we must have two-third gender rules. Two-third gender must be fulfilled. So one of the reasons is, one, to ensure that the two-third gender is achieved, both at county and national and at parliament. Parliament means Senate and National Assembly. Number two, you must have a representation from special interest groups, basically the youth, people with disability, women and workers, in that direction. So the nomination then allows those two indicators to be achieved. On media and election, someone told me to do a thesis on how social media was used to influence voting in Kenya. There was too much. There was misinformation. People changed things, and the social media was just trembling, if I will use that word. So the social media was a key indicator. People manipulated the information. But if social media is used well, is a nice tool. But in Kenya, where we are too much ethnic oriented or political groupings, it can be a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy, for that, especially on the issue on the new political media. We can agree that social media, this previous election was used highly, especially by the youth, to generate voters from different political parties. And so I welcome Harun Modena to lead us through this session. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Asia. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, you can see it.
Yes, I'm seeing. Yes, I'm seeing.
Okay, sure. We had a special speaker for this session. He was supposed to be a youth leader, but unfortunately he won't be joining. So I decided to just multitask and be a speaker to share what I've been doing during the election with focus on evidence-based advocacy for social accountability and what I've been doing during the election. So around 6 months ago this year, before the general election, I had some series of engagement at a grassroots level at my community. I'm from Kamberibe ward of Kilifi County in the coastal region of Kenya. So I formed a movement known as Fix Kamberibe. You can see what I've been doing at a grassroots level via Twitter and Facebook also, all those engagements. So my thematic focus was more over participatory governance and social accountability. So allow me to take a maximum of around 15 minutes to share this. The main aim for this session is just to inspire my fellow peers with a practical approach So for me, I'll be more of a practical, more of the grounded engagement for via this session. So the first thing, maybe I ask this question to the participants. What do you understand by this term advocacy? Please use 2 minutes and share via the chat box. So what do you understand by the term advocacy? Use the chat box, 2 minutes to share. For this session, every answer is correct. So feel free to share anything you know. Feel free to share anything you know. What do you understand by the term advocacy? Or what's the meaning of advocacy in line with what you are doing at your community or organizational level? So as you are typing and posting our chat box, allow me to share the next slide. So for my side, I will define that advocacy is more than raising awareness of an issue, problem, solution. It's all about trying to seek a positive attitude, behavior, policy, or system by influencing. It's all about making your voice heard. Like what we are doing for this session, we are connecting youth leaders with experienced mentors, experts, which is one of the main challenge. And also we are aiming to bridge that knowledge gap. From this session, we have observed we've been doing some breakout session to brainstorm challenges and solution of how young people are facing within the topic of governance and election. But this does not stop here. It's not a one-time event. It's a process. As I told you, we'll form a kind of advocacy booklet and learning document, which we'll be using it at our own community or county level, and also in a collective effort. So how to promote evidence-based advocacy approach? So allow me to share these 5 tips or approach you can use at your own organization or community to promote specific sector. I know here we are different youth leaders doing different things within our sector. And you will agree with me that election and governance, it's a cut-crossing topic in which we can bring issues of election, issues of peace, issues of mental health, all these issues which cut cross, see? So the first thing first, how to promote evidence-based advocacy approach. You need to organize community forum on specific topic. Example, if you are working on a sexual reproductive health or peace building sector, first you need to bring community members together in a forum, and this you can work closely with chiefs, assistant county commissioner at a grassroots level or at a location level or at ward level, and listen to the community to know their challenges and to know which issues really affect them. Next thing, adopt social media and trigger conversation to the right audience. So from my side, I used Facebook a lot because I realized that Facebook comprises of a lot of community members from the grassroots level. A majority of my fellow youth from my village are in Facebook. So I was engaging them. Also Facebook provides you in a way you can use a specific groups for this kind of engagement. Also, I tried to use Twitter, but Twitter was mainly to target the main decision makers or the call elites to help me to shed more light, you see? So there's a way also, as one of the speakers say, there's a way you can use social media for good to raise community issues. Next thing, we need to understand that as a youth leaders, we need to document all issue raised. Apart from documenting it, we need to fact check these issues so that we make sure that these issues are really, because some people can spread propaganda. So we need to do a fact check and engage with opinion leaders and key stakeholders. This means you need to build your own network, which you will use it to to shed light and to understand more on these issues. You see, if it's issues of girls drop out of schools, what's the main cause of girls drop out of schools? It's lack of mentorship. How? So you bring opinion leaders, key stakeholders to trigger more conversation to understand that issue. So here, as a youth leaders, you need to choose a specific sector. So if it's peace, you need to move with that topic, peace, peace, peace until the end. If it's sexual reproductive health, you need to focus within sexual reproductive health until the end. If it's mental health issues, you need to focus within. See, so to summarize that, you need to focus within the specific sector. Then after doing all these things from the community forums to social media, after documenting fact check, next thing is to develop your key advocacy message, which now you'll use it to influence key policymakers. But also you realize that to achieve all these things, you need to have allies, you need to have partners, you need to collaborate with your fellow peers, with your fellow organization, with the government institutions, see, with some of the NGOs, either from your community or from within your area of work. So like for me, I will show you how I did my part of the advocacy message. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my presentation. It's not moving. Yeah, so allow me now to share the practical example, some of the grassroots engagement. With support of global youth mobilization, early this year, between January, February, and March, we managed to get a grant of around 80,000, and we managed to coordinate around 10 dialogues at a community level, at a grassroots community level. The main reason was to understand what are the main issues young people are facing from the grassroots level. Something we observed that most of the participants were complaining concerning store projects and poor leadership from some political leaders. So just to give example from where I'm coming from, Kamberibe, we had a politician for 10 good years, but still our ward is leading with a store project. So the question was, why are we leading with these store projects? After fact-checking these issues which were raised with the fellow young people, after engaging with different community stakeholders, we managed to take some photos, and this photo you can see here, it's a nursery school within my ward. I remember my ward is receiving around 25 million ward development fund, 25 million, but still children at a nursery level are learning this kind of institution. So we try to kind of demanding answers, like why is this happening, you see? Also, from our approach, we managed to document all issues. We managed to track budget allocation from each project, which is still a store project. As you can see, this was kind of a campaign. Our question was, where is this man? This man was allocated to build multipurpose hall, 9 million in this financial year, but unfortunately, the multipurpose hall is still a store project. Where is our money? You see, so these were kind of questions we tried to trigger, and from the documentation, we managed to come up with this kind of thing. So, because it was a kind of electioneering period, we had also to bring a kind of civic education. We managed to challenge young people, like, hey, as young people, is either we be responsible now or else in future, these things will affect us. Like, we're supposed to have a social hall, and it was allocated these kind of millions in this financial year, but not yet. Now it's our time as young people to wake up and go to vote and make the right decision. You see, so we had a kind of a kind of a civic education. And for this, you'll be surprised that from April, I didn't have a kind of a financial support, but I just used the existing materials. These are kind of materials which were used by different organizations. So we just use the same materials and try to educate our fellow young people. Like, it's either we be proactive now or we will keep blaming. It's either we keep being reactive or we be proactive. We choose which path do we need. So after having those kind of community forums, after having social media engagements, after doing our fact check, and after engaging different stakeholders, we developed these kind of over campaign materials with all the store projects. You can see photo number 2. This is a head teacher office. I visited him, and he was afraid to meet with me in this kind of office, but I told him, like, no, let's sit and talk. See, and this photo shows the actual things at grassroots level, and it's bringing the answers that as young people we need to be on the forefront of accountability part and track the budget part of it, because if we want to hold our leader accountable, that means they can do anything with our resources. So what happened during election? Just to share some few tips. After engaging from January to June, on July, I was lucky to be nominated as an election observer by Human Rights Agenda, still to represent Kamberibe, because Kamberibe now was a kind of a hotspot, because most of the community members, they realize that they have power to do and to change a leader, you see. And one of the political leader was planning to import voter. So I was deployed to observe what is happening at the grassroots level. And surprisingly, after the political leader realized that this time things might be tough, they had to import voters. Now, according to our constitution, is that anyone can vote anywhere. But now the question is, and after this session, some experts will help to answer this question, is importation of voters allowed in Kenya? Because what we observe or what we learned during election within my ward is that more than 3,000 voters were imported to vote within this community. But most of these imported voters were more of, we are also Kenya, we can vote anywhere, you see, but they are not from this community, you see. So it's bring that question like, are we allowed to vote anywhere? What's about if voters are coming with in a caravan to vote for a specific person? Can you call that a voter bribery? So maybe experts will help to answer this question later on. Yeah, so because of what I've been doing for the last 6-7 months by using this kind of campaign material, challenging young people with evidence, showing them, the majority of young people came out and decided to vote. You see, majority of them are like, there's no need for me to go to vote because this person will be elected again, you see. But for me, I was showing them the facts like, hey guys, look, these are the facts for the last 10 years, you see. And just go this location, you'll observe ABCD. So will you vote or will you say you won't vote? So majority of them, after saw this kind of photos in social media, they realize that they have power to do, to go and vote. So this challenge them in a very big way. So what's happening during election? 2 days before the general election, majority of the young people and the community members decided to coming together and protect their own ward. So they were more of a kind of blocking those who are not from the community to vote, because Kamberibe ward, it's one of the most minority community, and it's a very small community. So most of the community members, they know each other. It's comprised of Kambes and Ribes. You see, so if you're not from that community, there's a way community members know each other very, very well. You see. And also there was a plan that most of the important voters want to stay in different villages. See, so most of the community members, they realized that they made mistakes previous election, and now they decided to wake up and be on the forefront of protecting their own community. And all this, it's because of the efforts I put on in a volunteerism way. So maybe just to pose this question for 3 minutes to each of you who participated in this session. What's your observation and key lesson you have learned from my presentation? Please, I will appreciate if you can share via the chat, just briefly. What's your observation and key lesson you have learned from my presentation? Share via the chat, 3 minutes. What's your observation and key lesson you have learned from my presentation? Waiting for you to share via the chat box. I would like to read what you have learned. I would love to read your reflection. I would love to read your reflection. Thank you for sharing. We have remained with 2 minutes. Please feel free to share what have you learned from my presentation. Just briefly, your reflection, your observation, lesson, what can you pick for your own engagement? As you keep sharing, allow me to proceed. I'm about to wind up. So before I engage myself, something I observed that majority of the community members were not aware of this third project emerging. And that means that there was no kind of evidence-based engagement, you see. Majority of them were not even aware that my community every financial year is being given 25 million. Majority of them, they're not aware that every financial year we are being given 20 million Word Scholarship Fund and 25 million for Word Development Fund. They're not aware of all these funds. You see, after this kind of awareness, they're like, oh my God, so every financial year we are receiving 40 million and still the community is in the same state, you see. So this is a kind of a way as a youth way that you can engage yourself at a grassroots level. Something before I forgot is that also you need to choose the area of engagement and focus within the specific area and observe what's the trend. So as a youth leader, you need to move with the trend happening that time. Like this was the election period and this was the right time engagement because everyone was focusing on the election part of it. So these were some of the photos whereby I was creating awareness of this store project to fellow young people, to the border community, and also to some of the community elders. Another thing I observe is that there was a lack of transparency for accountability, for social accountability. Throughout my research and engagement, I realized that budget expenditures are not made public. That is despite that, there's a lot of public resources. So these budget documents or expenditures are still not in public. Now, I think this will be the question to some of the experts today, and also tomorrow you'll have to ask some of the budget experts why are these budget expenditures are not yet in public, or just do your research at your own county level. Is there a budget expenditure at your own county level? And if not, why? Because these are public resources. See, they need to be public for us to review and question where we will observe these kind of loopholes. See, so these are some of the issues I observe at my community. Also, yeah, there's that issue of voter importation. The Kenya 2010 Constitution says that anyone can vote anywhere. But what about those who are influenced and paid to transfer the votes? How can this be addressed in future? So maybe Mr. Kennedy and other speakers will help to answer this question on the way forward. Also, allow me to finalize. Throughout the electioneering period, women were the most targeted groups. Majority had a very poor civic education, hence they were manipulated so easily. This means that there's a need of more engagement. There's a need of more engagement for women and girls, and that's why if you're observing this session, we tried our best to make sure that we had a kind of gender equality and bring more women experts so that we can influence some of the women who join this session. Yeah, another thing is it's about voter empathy. Apart from all this engagement, though there was an increment number of level of youth voting, but still the majority of young people, not only from a ward, but from other communities were like, why should I vote? And things will still remain the same. Why should I vote? And I want to get a job. Why should I vote? And I'm just giving someone a job and I will just remain unemployed youth. You see, so as a youth leaders, we have a big role to play to document some of the things we are doing and influence our fellow peers to be on the confront of challenging their leaders to be on the confront of engaging within this sector of governance, election, politics, budgeting part of it, and policy sector. Yeah, so what next is that we are still thinking how best we can document some of the best practices, how best we can document some of the key lessons so that we can use this kind of knowledge generated to influence more young people to join this sector. And what next after election, we are, as you all know, there's this thing called CIDP, County Integrated Development Plan. Some county have already finalized their document and some county are still formulating their own document. So the question is, are you engaging yourself? Are you pushing your voice to be included within the CIDP? Or are you watching and waiting for 5 years blaming? You should be aware that County Integrated Development Plan, it's a plan within the county government for 5 years. That means if your voice wants to be captured within that document, we will have to wait for the next 5 years for our voice to be captured. And if we need youth issues to be captured, we need to be so proactive and ensure our voices are being captured within the CIDP document. So this is the challenge. Go back to your county level and trying to do research concerning the County Integrated Development Plan and ensure that your voice have been captured. This picture, it's one of our vision for our community. We are dreaming that one day, one time, we will have a multi-purpose youth center whereby young people, instead of sitting idle within the community, they'll have this kind of center and share and kind of learn, do kind of digital skills, do some programming and all the social activities. Yeah, so thank you so much. Back to you, Asia.
Thank you so much, Harun, for sharing your experience. Very insightful from Ribe. Let me just highlight on some of the key issues that you've mentioned on how to promote evidence-based advocacy approach through social media, organizing community forums, develop key advocacy messages. And what stand out to me was how you used social media to, how you use social media to reach out to people, especially when you said you used Facebook, because you knew majority of people in Ribe are in Facebook, Twitter for people, elitist, policymakers, and that was really nice. Your approach on social accountability, the way you documented some of the stalled projects in terms of budgeting as well, that was really good. Civic education, you took up to yourself to educate some of the community members in Ribe so that they know their rights. And this amount of money is usually directed to Ribe in a year. You mentioned 25 million, and we just saw some of the, very scanty buildings that were meant to be maybe schools or, hospitals, and that was good. Another thing that you mentioned was adaptation of social media engagement, which I mentioned earlier. Also, you posed 2 questions that I will ask for our experts to note down. Is importation of voters allowed in Kenya? Importation of voters, is it allowed in Kenya? And the second question you asked was why the budget expenditure is not kept public, because it's public information. As Kenyans, we are supposed to know how much is allocated in every sector. And so why is this budget expenditure not kept public in Kenya? Yes, and I think I will, because of time, I will allow some of our experts to jump in and answer some of the questions posed from the breakout sessions and your shared experience. Thank you. Maybe I'll let Miss Caroline to come in first. Miss Caroline, are you with us? Thank you.
Yes, Asia.
Thank you.
So the question, because you have several issues have been raised, which specifically would you like me to address?
Maybe you can start with the issue on importation of voters, if it's allowed in Kenya, and then you can follow up with the budget expenditure. Why is budget expenditure not kept public in Kenya? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Asia. And thank you very much, Harun, for your presentation about what you're doing at your constituency and ward level. I hope the young people will also start fixing their words. I'd really like to highlight about importing of voters is actually quite retrogressive. And I think that needs to end with a certain generation, honestly, because you see, when I decide I am from a constituency, I want development to come to that constituency. So I need to mobilize people who have pertinent investment in that county to participate, because that is how development is sustainable. But if you bring people, you have stolen their right for them to participate in their constituency or in their area. So these people who are being used, honestly, that is taking away the sovereign right of people, because you are now, you see, when it comes to politics, politics has got a foundation, and one of the foundations is justice and fairness. So how is it that this person, who you know probably doesn't have access to their basic needs, now because they don't have access to their basic needs, for 100 or 200 bob, you get their ID, and then you bring them to vote. That is illegal. It is not right. And yeah, as young people, nobody should be bought at such a cheap price, even if you're being paid 10,000. Honestly, that is my thought and my belief about it. It is not right. For instance, but that view is also twofold. There is also another fold. For instance, they are university students. They have IDs. They are all in Nairobi University. The election is here, and they have a young person vying, for instance, in Pumwani or their whereabouts or Kasarani or somewhere. Then all the young people can gather around and vote for that person. But what is prohibited is I, who is running in Kajiado, getting people from Taita, Kwale, other counties to come and vote for me. So it's a twofold. There is a right to it and there is a wrong to it. And I think the lines are so clear that these young people, they have not been paid to vote for their fellow young people. They have come united as a united front to ensure that this person enters this seat for the young people. I hope that is clear. So in terms of budgeting, number one, young people have to understand what is a budget process. Which month does it begin? When does it begin? Who is involved? How can they participate? So there's been a lot of training for young people on social media, on policy making, but there needs to be much more investment in equipping young people to understand the budgeting cycle. It is a cycle, it has a beginning, it has a middle, and youth have to be at the forefront of participation. And even when it is being passed in parliament, there needs to be thousands of youth inside. You know, there is an arena where you and I, Mwananchi, are allowed to access parliament and follow the proceedings of the budget or any other agenda that is key or pertinent to the young people. So number one is youth understanding the budget cycle, owning the budget cycle, and not just at the national level. Let's start at the county level. At your ward level, do you participate in the budget making cycle? So even it doesn't matter where you are, even if someone is from Kisumu, like somebody who said they're from Kisumu, but they live in Nairobi, attend the ward budget cycle in Nairobi, because that is where you are at the moment, and understand the process, raise up your hand, ask questions from the CEC, who is a county executive commissioner in charge of finance. That is the person, the CEC finance is the person in charge of finance at the county level. Engage with the officials, and then from there, and also I'd really like to encourage young people, don't walk this journey alone. When you want to understand the budget cycle, bring other youth together who are passionate about changing your county, because this cannot be a one-foot soldier job. Get other young people who are passionate about this, equip yourselves, and that's how you make a difference. Before long, the governor will be asking, who are those young people who are interested in the budget in the county? And then your voice is heard. Also, feel free to write a memorandum of understanding through the Ministry of Youth at the county level to indicate. An MOU is very simple, but it has to be the voice of youth across the county. It cannot be just 2-3 people. So get several youth groups, the leaders across the county, write an MOU through the Ministry of Youth regarding, for instance, the budgeting, what it is a priority for the young people, ask to be involved in the budgeting cycle, participate, be heard. The first year, of course, penetration, entry level is not easy, but when you're persistent by second year, you're good. By third year, you'll be a guru in this. Yeah, so young people, keep your heads up and be persistent. Don't always wait for someone to hold your hand. Nobody held my hand, and now I'm holding the hand of other people. It is okay when nobody holds your hand. You can still be the change.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline, for that elaborate answer on voter importation and budgeting, where you say that the youth should understand and own the budget process. I'll allow Mr. Kennedy to answer. Before I get to Fabrice, allow me to ask Mr. Kennedy if you have any comments regarding the two questions that I posed.
Yeah, the first question on
voter importation.
it's actually, by the way, when are voter imported? Voters are not imported on an election day. They are actually imported during the process of taking the vote. So by the time you're seeing them voting, they were actually already imported. It's actually illegal, but we need to notice when are they imported. It's during the your card katwa. So as I said, for young people from my first session was that we need to be, we have the numbers. Even if we have 75% of the population. So I think for me, the issue is we need to understand when importation happens. On the budget, just to scratch without talking too much, I think the Constitution of Kenya has really made it clear that in the budgeting process, people must participate. And if there's no participation, you can actually go to court and overturn the process. However, it's not clear on the threshold when the constitution should be overturned, the budget should be overturned. So I think for me, the next session, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow's presentation, I hope we can also be able to identify within the budgeting process specific areas where people can participate. You know, even in the CIDP process. So young people just need to understand, where am I supposed to participate? Where you're supposed to give views. Even when they're doing evaluation of the project, you're also supposed to go there, so that then social accountability can be matched together with what is being evaluated in the reporting. If we don't participate in the social accountability and we don't participate in the budgeting process, then yeah, we shall be given what is available.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for that. Thank you so much. I'll rush over to Fabrice, then to Jaco.
Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you for the session, for the presenter. And I use this opportunity to, welcome for the sessions that we have tomorrow. We'll really touch on many critical issues. At the same time, I want to comment on the first question. And I think the previous speakers elaborated really very well on the budget aspect, and when it comes to, the election importation, it all comes to when we see, for example, it is an issue, when we define it as an issue for our community, when, for example, we realize that the people that are being voted do not really represent our aspirations. We need to find a way and mechanism, for example, as young people, to challenge that. But for now, in the electoral reforms, the recent in Kenya, it's allowed, And when you look at the chapter 66 of the Election Offense Act, you don't find electoral importation as a challenge. It's still a problem only because, somebody will not really represent the people in the community, but still import the voters because they have money and make it to pass. That one aspect. But also we need to look at it in terms of political strategy, because we are calling young people to run over and over, is to say as well, when you start thinking about addressing the issues in the community, running for office, you will as well use all necessary means within the law, and when the laws allow that, you'll use that loophole. You'll say, for example, I have friends who support me who are not from here. Can I pick on them? So we have to look them both sides. On the side, how can you use them as you run? Number two, is it really answering the question as well? Because it's legal, it's fine. But at the same time, if it's really undermining the capacity of the electoral official to deliver or their ability to be accountable, then we need to come together and find ways to, push for electoral reforms. And thank you again for, raising the question. And welcome to the sessions of tomorrow. We're preparing great stuff from you guys.
Thank you, Fabrice, for that. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Jaco, you raised your hand?
Yes, and again, just talking from a South African or even a global perspective, I don't think these are foreign problems in terms of South Africa. With voter registration, there's always this question whether people are actually living in the areas that they are voting in. So yeah, South Africa also tries to combat that discussion. But on the question of budgets, one interesting thing that I've seen in our work is that we are so often focused on getting people involved with the national budget. And I think, or even their local budget. And I think a lot of times we have to pivot ourselves towards meeting people where they are and making things available to them in a way that entices them to be part of it. For example, in Uganda, we run a program to educate women on the budget process. And I worked with one of our entrepreneurs that's looking to empower female farmers. And through that conversation, it became clear that female agricultural holders in Uganda don't own the land. They often don't even get to decide what they plant because the men own the land. The men say what they should plant. And when they actually get the income from what they've planted, the men decide how that is being spent. So you're now asking a woman to be part of the local budget, where to a large extent, she's still shut out of her household budget. So a big component here is to bring clarity as to why women should be part of setting the household budget. How do you support women to stand together in that space and decide how money that they earn is being spent? And in that way, you make it so much more clear in terms of, okay, so this is what happens at a household level, what is happening at a local or a national level. So I think we should always just look for entry points into conversations that link to the living politics, where people are now, and not immediately make the jump to the big stuff, because sometimes the small stuff matters as well. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it adds value.
Sure is. Thank you so much, Jaco, for giving that experience from South Africa and Uganda. Do we have any other question before we wrap up for today? Any question from participants? You can also drop your questions or comments via the chat box. All right. I think if we don't have further questions, I'll like to thank the presenters again, Mr. Harun Modena, Mr. Kennedy, Ms. Caroline, Mr. Jaco, for giving and sharing your experiences and insights in this session today. Thank you so much, and I'm hoping to see you all again tomorrow, in the next sessions tomorrow, with the amazing panelists and speakers. Over to you, Harun, as I take the group photo.
Hey, okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the today's session. Thank you so much for engaging and sharing some of the challenging solutions. We have Ms. Wakesho helping to document what's happened today. And we have Kik also is doing graphic record. They will be sharing all of this tomorrow morning, and they will actively engage. So maybe just the way forward, because of time, we just need to do a quick group photo. So we will request if you can turn on your video so that we do a quick group photo. So maybe Asha, you will help us for taking some screenshots.
And